Welcome back to Beyond the Battlefield. Today we explore 3 verses from Chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, verses 14, 15, and 16. At first, they sound simple, almost like a farmer's manual. They speak of food, rain, and sacrifice. But as we unfold them, we'll see that Krishna is teaching us nothing less than the law of life, the cycle of contribution, and the essence of leadership. And anchor, I must say. These verses feel like a messenger. They're not just ancient philosophy. They are a direct voice to us here and now.
Exactly, Jessica. These verses form a chain of wisdom. Verse 14 begins with the language of the farmer. Food, rain, Yajna. Verse 15 lifts us into the cosmic. Action arising from Brahma, and Brahma from the imperishable Brahman. Verse 16 then warns, if you break this veil, if you live only for yourself, your life becomes wasted. So together, these 3 verses show us how the world sustains itself and how leaders must sustain the wheel of life.
Let's begin with verse 14.
All beings live by food. Food comes from rain. Rain comes from Yajna, sacrifice. And Yajna is born from action.
It feels like a circle, doesn't it? A wheel turning.
Here, Krishna is speaking to farmers. At that time, most of society depended on agriculture. Food sustains life, rain sustains food, Yajna sustains rain, and action sustains Yajna. But here's the key, Yajna is not just the ritual fire. People misunderstood it. They thought, oh, let's build a fire altar, chant some mantras, pour ghee, and the rain will fall. Krishna is not talking about ritual alone. He's talking about the fire of cooperation, the offering of our work into the larger whole.
Cooperation? Can you give us an example?
Picture an old-style car factory before robots. One worker fits the seats, another mounts the steering wheel, another fixes the tires. Alone, none of them can make a car. But together, in rhythm, in trust, a complete vehicle rolls out. That is Yajna. Each person does their role, not just for salary, not just for ego, but as a contribution to the whole. The collective spirit becomes like rain, creating an atmosphere of prosperity, trust, harmony. Rain here doesn't only mean water from the sky. It means the climate of abundance that appears when people give selflessly. The crops of success, the harvest of joy, they grow in that rain.
So Yajna isn't about fire and bricks, it's about turning work itself into an offering.
Yes, and here's the deeper layer. When you act in the spirit of Yajna, 2 things happen. First, outer rain, material prosperity, harmony, growth. Second, inner rain, your vasanas, those restless desires and attachments, begin to burn away. So Yajna is not just a social glue. It is also an inner fire of purification. That's why Krishna begins with this metaphor. Because it's easy to grasp for a farmer, but it carries a universal law for leaders.
Then comes verse 15.
Know that action arises from Brahma. Brahma arises from the imperishable. Therefore, the all-pervading Brahman is eternally established in Yajna.
This feels cosmic.
It is cosmic. Krishna is saying all action originates in Brahma, the creative order of the universe. And Brahma itself arises from the imperishable, Brahman, the eternal reality. So every action, every duty is rooted in the eternal. And Yajna, sacrifice, contribution, is how we reconnect with that eternal source. In modern language, work becomes sacred when it aligns with timeless values. This means leadership isn't just about KPIs, quarterly profits, or beating competition. Those are surface waves. True leadership is about aligning action with Dharma, with something timeless, something that serves life, not just self. Without that alignment, action becomes mere busyness. With that alignment, even answering an email, even mentoring one colleague becomes yajna.
So, leaders who remember the source transform ordinary action into sacred action.
Exactly. That's the difference between a manager and a leader. A manager extracts, a leader inspires contribution. A manager works for results. A leader works for yajna, for a cause larger than self. And when people feel that spirit, the rain falls. Prosperity, trust, innovation, they all flow naturally.
And then, verse 16.
Whoever does not follow this wheel lives in sin, delighting in the senses, living in vain.
That is a strong warning.
Yes, Krishna is blunt here. If you break this wheel, if you live only for yourself, if you refuse to contribute, you still live but in vain. Life becomes restless, agitated, empty. Sin here doesn't mean punishment, it means waste. A wasted life because you had the chance to align with the eternal, to give back, to nourish the wheel, and you chose not to. That is why Krishna calls it vain.
So he's saying, don't just take. Nourish the gods, and they will nourish you. Nourish the cycle, and the cycle nourishes you.
Yes, in leadership terms, don't break the wheel of trust and contribution. A leader who exploits people, who drains resources, who thinks only of self, creates drought. Not drought of rain, but drought of morale, of trust, of culture. But a leader who nourishes the wheel creates rain. Prosperity, innovation, joy. This is why these verses are not just spiritual wisdom. They are manuals of sustainable leadership.
Let's bring this into today's age. In a startup, if founders only chase valuation but ignore the wheel of team trust and well-being, culture dries up. In manufacturing, if leaders only extract labor, ignoring safety and dignity, innovation dries up. In AI and technology, if companies exploit data, ignore ethics, and break the wheel of humanity, trust dries up. But when leaders act in the spirit of yajna, contribution, offering, stewardship, they create rain. Rain of ideas, rain of trust, rain of prosperity.
Beautifully put. And here's the ultimate leadership takeaway. Leadership is stewardship of the wheel of nature, the wheel of people, the wheel of purpose. Our duty is not just to lead projects, but to keep the wheel turning. Because when the wheel turns, life flourishes. And when the wheel breaks, everything dries up.
My friends, these three verses, 14, 15, 16, are a map of leadership. They remind us, life is not about what we take, but what we contribute. When you turn your work into yajna, the wheel turns, rain falls, food grows, life thrives. But when you break the wheel, when you live only for yourself, you may still breathe, but your life will be hollow. So the call is clear. Lead as yajna, work as yajna, live as yajna. Because in that spirit, even the smallest action becomes sacred. If today's conversation touched you, share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Follow, like, and subscribe to Beyond the Battlefield. And do check the links in the description. You'll find reflections, resources, and ways to take this journey deeper. Until next time, keep turning the wheel.